this New Orleans hood history on the swamp creature they call the rougarou. I didn't say arugula, I said a rougarou.
Rougarou is said to haunt the sugarcane fields in Louisiana, as well as the swamps and some forests.
So one day a woman comes in, very beautiful, very curvy, just a treat to see. When Uncle Roy went back to the store, he carried his pew-pew everywhere he went with him. Yes, on the shift, on the job, and he told the boss he had no fear. He like, fire me if you have a problem, but I'm not gonna be at this job without this. When this woman was just lurking here with the same earring that the werewolf had.
Now, some accounts depict it as a more traditional werewolf, capable of shape-shifting between the animal form and its human form.
A werewolf-like creature, half man, half werewolf, is bloodthirsty and looking to get rid of his curse. It is said that the curse happens to people who weren't good Christians. Examples of this could be things like not doing confession on Sundays or participating during Lent.
So they don't even need the moon to change. They can change, anytime.
The video was recorded on May 22nd at the Amarillo Zoo. They just now, probably 6 to 7 days ago, released this photo. Local authorities in Amarillo are asking for the public's help in identifying whatever it is.
But it's going to sound like BS, but I saw a werewolf. I know, it sounds like I'm making it up. But if I didn't see it myself, I wouldn't believe it either.
Werewolves in New Orleans. Let's talk the legend of the rougarou. So the rougarou derives from two French words, meaning wolf, and garou, meaning man who turns into an animal. Now, it is said that this legend was brought over to Louisiana by the French colonists, the French settlers. And like the melting pot Louisiana is, the myth of the rougarou has been intertwined with Native American myth as well as African American myth. And now it's a really, I don't want to say precious, solidified as a Cajun urban legend. There's even a festival in Houma, Louisiana, dedicated to the rougarou. The rougarou is typically described as a creature with the body of a man and the head of a dog or a wolf. Now, some accounts depict it as a more traditional werewolf, capable of shape-shifting between the animal form and its human form. The rougarou is said to haunt the sugarcane fields in Louisiana, as well as the swamps and some forests. The rougarou is often portrayed as a nocturnal predator, and its prey is livestock and occasionally humans.
I already know none of you are going to believe what I'm about to tell you, but I promise it's true. This happened like 15 years ago. I know it's going to sound like BS, but I saw a werewolf. I know, it sounds like I'm making it up, but if I didn't see it myself, I wouldn't believe it either. But let me tell you what happened. So I'm driving home, I got the kids in the car with me, and I'm in a van. Ugh, I know, that sounds like the scary part, but it's not. But I'm in a van, and I drive past this one part of the road that has like this cliff thing on the right side. And out of nowhere, something jumps off that cliff that I've been told is like 20 feet high. I cannot judge height, but I've been told it was 20 feet high and lands like this. The classic superhero pose, which, by the way, is also how squirrels land. See, squirrels land like that too. So he landed like a squirrel, but he was huge. So he lands right in the middle of the road, turns, looks at me, stands up, then runs. And he looked like this. Just kidding. He really looked like this. Now, this is somebody's like fan art, not a real picture, duh. But this is the most accurate that I could find that actually looks like the one I saw. So I immediately call my mom and dad. My dad answers. I tell him I'm like frantic. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just saw like a werewolf. It jumped off the cliff thing. It was like 2 vans tall. I still stand by that. That's how tall it was. So I don't know how tall. Like 12 feet or something. It was huge. Huge. So my dad says it was probably a barn owl. They're pretty big. A what? It was not a damn barn owl. Oh my God. This thing scared me to death. Terrified me. Well, I tell the story, everybody's like, haha, yeah, whatever. So then I don't ever tell anybody again. But in Kentucky, not far from here, Kentucky Lake is known for having werewolves, right? Well, who cares about that? Because I had someone send me a Ring camera photo of what looks like what I saw. This footage was taken on, like, Native American land. They said they didn't want their name put out there. I don't blame them, because I know all of y'all are going to think I'm crazy because I say I saw a werewolf. But here, let me show you this. Oh, there it is. There's its face. This is like, what, like a F-150 or some kind of big truck. But look, you stack it on top, 2 vans. This thing would be 2 vans tall. Look at its face. Do you see the wolf right here? Call me crazy. I don't care. That's what I saw. That's a werewolf.
Can you talk about the werewolves? Of course, of course. So werewolves weren't always legends, y'all, like some of y'all think they are today. In some cultures, they were a punishment. In some cultures, it was a birthright. You feel me? Some say they were cursed warriors, and others say it's a bloodline, and, you know, and it's passed down like a secret, basically. You feel me? In Europe, South America, as well as New Orleans, there are rumors of families that shift underneath the moon. But only if they fed the beast inside. You feel me? That's one of the necessary components to their transformation. Not sure exactly how it works, but they have to feed. Because I do know people that come from the werewolf line that aren't actual wolves today. You feel me? So, yeah. So if you know anybody like me, well, not like me, like people I know that have like rage, blackouts, insane level of strength, maybe they even heal faster than a normal person. Like maybe they twist their ankle and next week you see them walking, dancing, you know, doing flips type shit. But the scariest part, y'all, the scariest is they're out here trying to figure out how to shift without the moon.
Is there a werewolf terrorizing the swamps in Louisiana? Let's get into it. Legend has it that after midnight, a werewolf-like creature, half man, half werewolf, is bloodthirsty and looking to get rid of his curse. It is said that the curse happens to people who weren't good Christians. Examples of this could be things like not doing confession on Sundays or participating during Lent. This curse is said to last for up to 101 days. Once the werewolf draws blood, the curse is now passed on to that person, and the werewolf is now free from that curse. This curse is also part of Canadian lore, which makes sense because we have that whole French thing going on down here too. Throughout history in every part of the world, there really is a werewolf legend that goes around. The loup-garou is not to be confused with the rougarou, which we will talk about later on this month. It is said that they are super specific on who they hunt and go after. So when the clock strikes midnight, they're hunting for Catholics. In order to protect themselves, people would place 13 pennies in a line in front of their front door because it is said that the werewolf cannot count up to 13. He does not recognize the 13 number, and he just keeps counting over and over and over until it's sunrise, and then they're in their human form. Of course, for generations, people have been making movies, telling tales, writing books. Even children's books were written about the loup-garou. Those Cajun babies stayed in line because they were scared to death. A lot of people don't go into the swamp after midnight. I mean, I would never, but it's out of pure fear of running into something like that. There have been reports of screams and howling and sightings, even footprints in the mud in the swamp area. I guess this story isn't that scary if you're a good Christian.
Alright, y'all. This is what us believers have been waiting for. Finally, actual photo evidence that went mainstream. And for all you doubters and haters out there, take a good long look. The video was recorded on May 22nd at the Amarillo Zoo. They just now, probably 6 to 7 days ago, released this photo. Local authorities in Amarillo are asking for the public's help in identifying whatever it is, but you already know. They're asking people if it's a person who dresses up and walks around at night, or if it's just some sort of weird anomaly. At the end of the day, come on people, you already know what it is. It's a werewolf. It is a werewolf. Finally, for those of us believers that got the hate and the criticism all along, we knew. Bask in it. We told you so. But be humble. We don't know just yet. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone step forward and claim this picture or this outfit, right? At the end of the day, they'll probably debunk it somehow. People that follow me and people that watch my page, you already know, we know the truth. They caught a werewolf on film. Now, I haven't seen the footage. If anybody gets their hands on that footage, please, or sees it, tag me or send it my way. Nightgod87@protonmail.com. I want to see this thing move. They haven't released the actual CCTV camera footage yet. So if you find it or can get access to it, that is gold. Help me out. These things have been around for centuries. They've just been elusive and really good at hiding. They stay away from humans as they know what humans tend to do. The lore goes back thousands of years. Dogman. It's simple. I imagine a lot of people are probably going to say that because of that tuft on the back of his neck, that it's a mask. But if you zoom in closely, take a look. Take a look. You can see that it's looking at the camera. It must have heard it or saw the movement of the camera or something like that. But like you see, eye, mouth, nose. That on its shoulder, that's its offspring. Again, if you look closely, there's its head. It's over its shoulder, holding on. Now that's something we don't see among wolves that walk on four legs. But two, that changes the story, changes the game. Werewolf.
Greek folklore, there's a mythical creature called the lycan. The lycan is an individual that can transform into a wolf or a hybrid of a wolf. This transformation can happen at any given time, unlike werewolves, which typically happens on the full moon. Werewolves and lycans are similar, but are considered to be different from each other. A lycan resembles a humanoid wolf while it's in its wolf form. They are believed to be very religious creatures, where werewolves are said to be associated with witchcraft. Both creatures turn into wolves that look quite different from each other, but still people get confused on which one is the other. Did you know there were two different types?
Tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would.
I have a lot of these. Here's just one of them. And when I say a lot, I mean at least 10 that I can recall from the age of 4 to present day. And sharing them just feels, yeah, no one's going to believe me. So when I was about 16 years old, I was living in a place called Monroe, Michigan. And I went to a house party because I used to get in a lot of trouble and sneak out and do stuff like that. But anyway, I go to this house party and there's a bunch of people. It's some like rich shishi person that I wasn't friends with in high school, but I had an older boyfriend, which was inappropriate. But anyway, there's this guy that comes in, okay? This man comes in. He is ethnically ambiguous. He's tall. He's muscular, fit, but like lean. He looks like a vampire. He looks like some Caribbean pseudo, I don't know, from around the world vibe. Something about him felt old. And at this time, you know, I'm afraid of my intuition and my gifts. I use them to keep myself safe, and my radar was going off. And so I'm literally in a circle of people, and it's like this guy walked in, and, you know, at that time I thought time slowed down because I thought maybe he's cute. No, in hindsight, everything slowed down because it did. And he was expected or something because he was bringing something. Anyway, this guy comes and I noticed time slow down. I feel like everything kind of feels muffled and strange. And I look at him and he's looking right at me, like looking at me, just looks at me, and it feels like longer than it should be because he just got there. Like, isn't he looking for someone else? And then it stops, and he's like, goes about the party, and it's almost like time went back to normal. And somebody's like, yo, did you hear what I said? And I was like, no. What were you saying? So as the night goes on, everybody seems to be progressively like, I don't know, like drunk or something. It was weird. Like, I know that they were partying and stuff, but I wasn't partaking in that. Like, there were certain things being passed around I didn't want to be involved in, because it's not that I was a goody two shoes. I didn't feel safe to do those kind of things with those people. So I'm hanging out, and then I go into the kitchen, and of course it's Mr. Vampire Werewolf, whatever he is, dude, and two other people, and they're talking, and I come in, and then somebody's like, yo, come over here, meet so-and-so. Do not remember his name. Cannot for the life of me. It's like it's been erased from my brain. So I go over, and we start talking, and then somehow, which again, don't know how this happens, we get on the topic of supernatural stuff, ghosts of the area. We start talking about the loup-garou, which is like the wolfman of like origin from Canada and France and from Louisiana. Like, there's different names for werewolves in different cultures, but specifically loup-garou comes up. Okay. And I talk about how I went on a tour in the old haunted part of where I lived, and in the historical tour they made jokes about the loup-garou and how it was still around, and people from the Civil War era saw it, and it would come around at night, and they'd have to leave like raw meat outside and all this shit. And so I unwillingly, just for some reason, blurted out the words, oh, I'm pretty sure that there's one that's around my house in the woods behind my house, because I've seen something that I can't explain. And then now my brothers and I have had shared dreams of this like wolf or wild dog or werewolf thing, and we didn't know about each other's dreams until we shared them. Okay? So as I'm saying this, I can feel homeboy, the one that, I'm getting the creeps right now talking about it. I can feel the guy who, again, I don't know how old he is. I don't know I know he's older than me, but he seems old, like internally old. I can feel his like ear stand up. Like it's a genuine, like something about this conversation got his attention. Like, it really got his attention to where he's like, how would you know that? And that's what he said. He's like, how do you know they look like that? And I was like, I don't know how I know. I'm saying I saw it. And he goes, why do you think it let you see it? And I'm like, that's a weird question to ask. Why would you ask that? And he goes, because something like that, if it wants to be seen, it will show itself to you. No one's ever really seen one unless it wants to be seen. And I was like, how do you know? And he goes, how do you think I know? I was like, shut up. The next thing that he said is what I just will never forget, and it's weird, and he goes like, you're all going to be like, what are you talking about? He goes, when you were a kid and you would look out the passenger side of the window as the car was going really fast, and you would see or imagine in your mind the thing that's jumping from object to object to keep pace with your car? He goes, that's one of them. And if you saw it, then they let you see them. They follow you because they're protecting you. What? What? So I, of course, am like, how did you know that I used to do that? And he goes, I just know. I was like, okay. And I didn't know how to exit the conversation, so I made up an excuse to like go to the garage. And even though I left the room, I had to leave that party in the middle of the whole thing because I felt like no matter where I went, that somehow that guy was following me or watching me. And every time I think of him, or like even now I've brought him up, I can see like he turns into like, it's like his face can turn into a wolf. And it's very much like, it reminds me of things that people in my family told me to stay away from. Like, you don't do this type of magic. You don't try to transform into animals. You don't do things for personal gain. Like, there's just a lot of, it just reminds me of one of those. It reminds me of, some people talk about the skinwalker. This one reminds me more of a different legend that I don't want to talk about either because it gives me the heebie-jeebies. But anytime I see crows, anytime I see wolves, and anytime I see my guide, which is the spider, I know to pay attention because of this story. Like, this is where it all started for me and solidified that animals are messengers and animals will be attracted to certain types of energies. And if you ever meet a wolfman or a lycan or a loup-garou or something that is a hybrid, you'll know and you won't be able to forget it. So that's my story. Jesus.
History books. Come here, let me stress y'all out right fast, because this New Orleans hood history on the swamp creature they call the rougarou. I didn't say arugula, I said a rougarou. This is a Cajun legend swamp monster, kind of, because they say it come from the swamps, but it would grab your children in one of the versions of the story that I heard. Then I heard it was a witch that put a 101-year spell on a man in New Orleans that made his head turn into a werewolf head and banished him to the swamps. The rougarou is a French monster that made its way to New Orleans through the Cajuns. They used to say they saw it in the swamps every time, no matter what you say it looked like. But my uncle said he saw it in the east on Bundy Road. I don't know if the rougarou is a real creature in New Orleans or not, but I don't be in the swamp, so I'll never find out. And if it's in New Orleans East, it's probably already got killed. But you ain't got to take my word for it. Go to New Orleans Witches Brews tours, and they'll tell you all about it.
Werewolf story time, y'all. And this one is kind of crazy, and it's a little bit sad. I'm not even gonna hold y'all. This is Roy Stubblefield, and this story is about him. So around 1981, Roy moved to New Orleans from, I believe, Nebraska, and he just started working at a clothing store in the city. So Roy started working at the store. He loved it. It sold women and men's clothing, so he got a chance to meet a lot of women, which that's what he was trying to do back in his young day. He was a young boy trying to be out here looking for the huzz, you feel me? So one day, a woman comes in. Very beautiful, very curvy, just a treat to see. So he goes over and asks her, you just can't be too thirsty, even in those days. So he asks, hey, do you need help? She's like, oh, no, type shit. I'll let you know if I need help. So Roy's like, cool. So he goes back to folding clothes or whatever he was doing. Whole time, Roy is, make eye contact here and there, hoping she'll ask him for help, She then does need help, so she actually looks over at Roy, kind of, signals him over. Roy, excited as fuck, heads over there, you feel me? So the girl's asking, and he just had put on some shirts or skirts or some article of clothing. I can't remember exactly why. It was like an hour to 2 hour, 3 hour interview I watched. And there's a lot of them. If y'all want to go check them out, they're up on YouTube. There's a lot of information and research, and he has video footage. And before we get any further, TikTok, this is only for entertainment purposes only. This is all allegedly and hypothetically speaking. I don't know anything. All right. We just having fun over here on my page. So don't come over here with all that. Don't be trying to hunt me, ask me, look for the question. We good over here. All right, y'all. So back to the story. So she basically asked him like, hey, do you have this skirt in a different color? He like, yeah, I got it in blue, red, whatever. Do you want me to go in the back and grab it for you? She goes, yeah, type shit. Cool. He goes in the back and grabs the skirt. Brings it out to her, then they just spark up a conversation naturally, and this is what he wanted to happen anyway. So the whole time in this conversation, she's eyes locked in the eye contact. They're in each other's face, damn near. So Roy goes ahead and asks the girl like, hey, we want to go out for, dinner, drink, coffee, some type of shit. You want to hang out? She's staring at Roy, like looking at him like, are you sure? So she eventually just says, yes, sure. So Roy like, cool. Let me get your house phone number. Because back in the day, this is 1981. They didn't have cell phones. Let me get your house phone number. And remember, like I said, she had eyes locked the whole time with Roy. Roy said this is the only time she really didn't have eye contact. So she goes, I don't give out my phone number. Roy thought that was weird. So he like, all right, so give me your address so I know where to pick you up type shit for the date. Again, these are the only two times she didn't keep eye contact with him. She looks away again and says, I don't give out my address. And that's not like too shocking. That's pretty normal. I don't give out my fucking address. You feel me? So that wasn't the weird part to me. The weird part was when he asked her why, she was just saying, a lot of men and boys try to court me. Even in 1981, nobody was using the word court, y'all. So even Roy thought that was a weird word to use at that time. So he like, damn, like, how we gonna meet up? She like, how about we meet at the park in Metairie at 7? He like, cool type shit. She leaves the store swaying, looking beautiful, and walked out. He's excited, but he done forgot to actually ask what was the address to the park, because, you know, he's new in town. All right, chat. So after Uncle Roy peed on himself twice, dropped Herman back home, got in his car, and drove off back to New Orleans, he never saw those dudes again. He went back to his job and told his boss the next day. And you know what his boss said? Mind y'all, he didn't even want to tell his boss because he's like, I'm going to get fired for telling this crazy ass story. I sound like a psychopath. When he does, she like, oh, it's just a rougarou. Just like casual like that, y'all. And if you're new here, if you don't know what a rougarou is, it is a Louisiana-based werewolf. It does not need the moon to transform. And it is French-based, I believe. Or just European in general. Anywho, at this point, when Uncle Roy went back to the store, he carried his pew-pew everywhere he went with him. Yes, on the shift, on the job, and he told the boss he had no fear. He like, fire me if you have a problem, but I'm not gonna be at this job without this. When this woman was just lurking here with the same earring that the werewolf had. And Uncle Roy basically said the way the werewolf looked at him, like, she knew him. You feel me? I don't know, y'all. I can or cannot say. And Uncle Roy as well, he didn't 100% confirm it. But hypothetically speaking, we think the woman was a werewolf. So hear me out, y'all. Hear me out. So the woman comes to his store earlier that day, you know, looking just as fit, curvy, but strong, healthy, beautiful black woman. He said her eyes was glowing like there was gold, like mixing her eyes. It was strange how he explained it, but if you go back to Uncle Roy's videos, you can definitely find out. She had the same gold hoop earrings that the wolf had. And he said from the wolf's body, you can tell that she wasn't like feeding, she wasn't nursing any pups or kids, I guess. He said it looked like a younger wolf's body. Like healthier, you know what I'm saying? Like strapping muscles, everything was in there. And she didn't hurt him. Like I barely hear stories like that. Most time if you run into a wolf, you ain't gonna come back and tell us no story. It ain't no story time. Most of the people that get away, they get away by accident, or they're dealing with teenage and kids wolves that they ran into by accident. And especially this is a rougarou or a lougarou, depending on where you at, what part of Louisiana. So they don't even need the moon to change. They can change, you know, anytime. And I think Uncle Roy said that like, oh, it wasn't even a full moon. Rougarous don't use the full moon, brother. So if anybody thinks that they do, they don't. They're a different breed of French werewolf. So don't. So here's my theory, y'all. I'm just trying to make logic out of, you know, illogical things. So I'm assuming when she went back home, she talked to her mother about, you know, going out to the park or going to hang out with this boy. It's clear, even as her as a grown woman, no, she wasn't that grown. She might have seemed like 18 to 20, 21. She couldn't go out with boys. She already told him her mother doesn't let boys come and court her, so they was going to meet up at the park. Mama Duke said no. And I think she said no for many reasons. Like, maybe she didn't want to expose them in their, you know, community. I don't know if the girl had control issues, so it could have been that too. She might have brothers that would eat you, who knows? But just think about it. If I was a wolf and I had children that were wolves, I don't want them dating y'all anyway. I don't want them out with y'all. What if they slip up? What? Or they, like, no. And it seemed like it was an ongoing problem from the way she said it in the store, like this been happening type shit. So I think she tried to sneak out and then she got caught. And the fact that she says she lives close to that park in Metairie, come on, y'all. Who else would that be? So I feel like she's seen him leaving with the other guys, and she was just as shocked to see him as he was to see her. That's why she didn't hurt him. But then he saw her brothers and sisters' eyes in the woods. Yeah, nah, I'm out of there. I'm done. Yeah, nah, y'all. Nah.
Cover the rougarou. The rougarou is a creature of French folklore. Adopted by the Cajuns, it was originally called the lougarou. Yes, it is comparable to the werewolf, but not exactly. It is said to stalk the swamps of Acadiana and the greater New Orleans area. So what separates the rougarou from a regular werewolf? The rougarou has the ability to decide when it shifts. It does not have to wait for a full moon. It is also said that the rougarou prowls these areas looking for children who misbehave. Originally, the rougarou said to hunt Catholics who did not follow the rules of Lent for 7 years consecutively. This is what one looks like. It has the body of a human, the face of a wolf. They are said to be very large and intimidating, with sharp, jagged teeth. In fact, the Audubon Zoo actually has a setup for it. You can see here that it is said to shift between animal and human form at will. It was also believed rougarous were under the spell of a witch, and they had 101 days to transfer the virus. Stay safe.
2 different people emailed me about werewolf sightings, and I didn't think anything of the first one, but when the second came in, I realized there might be something to this, because both emails were from different people, but from the same area, which is London, Ohio, if you're familiar. I'm going to tell you Cody's story first, because I feel like it builds for the second story, and these 2 stories might be related. Cody said I could use his real name. He didn't care to be tagged, but if you see a Cody in the comments, that's him. This story is actually Cody's father's. Cody's dad was an avid outdoorsman, fisherman. He was used to being alone in the woods for long stretches of time, and nothing really scared him except for when he told this story. Cody said he was not a man of hyperbole. He did not believe in the supernatural. He was scientific minded, except he could tell when he told this story that he believed it. The way that my phone just fell, but Cody's description of his father reminds me of my own father, because he's very scientific minded, but he also has one story that he can't explain. I'll tell that some other time. Cody said 30 years ago, his dad went out fishing in the middle of the night on a large man-made lake near London, Ohio. Cody said he was out in the middle of the lake fishing near a spillway, which is a structure that allows excess water to flow around a dam. I had to look that up. And then there was a road. He's out there for a little while when he looks up near the spillway and he sees a large wolf-like creature standing on 2 legs staring at him. I don't know how far away he was, but he said for sure it was a wolf or a dog creature, but it was 7 feet tall when it stood on its hind legs. And it stood for long enough where Cody's dad knew that it wasn't a regular dog. And the way that this upright wolf creature was staring at him sunk his heart into his gut. He sat still for a few seconds. His heart was racing in his chest and he was watching it watch him. When he moved to get the boat closer, the wolf took off running on 4 legs. Apparently, this sighting freaked him out enough where he packed it up and he went home. He didn't tell anyone for years because he didn't want to be perceived as someone who's seeing cryptids in the middle of the night. Until one night, his sister, so Cody's aunt, comes home. She was out riding around with their friends in the woods, and she comes home and claims that she saw a wolf-like creature standing on 2 legs in the woods. She was also apparently near the lake when she saw it. So now it's common lore in Cody's family that both his father and his aunt have seen this same creature. And this leads me to my second story, which was sent in by a man named Paul. Paul sent this story in December. I was keeping it in my back pocket because, to be honest with you, I don't really believe in cryptids, or I didn't. But I also want to be fair and transparent because if I ever assume that I know everything, then I'm never learning. So I'm going to keep an open mind, and both of these stories make me think that maybe there's something I'm missing. Paul's story takes place in 2007. He was 19 at the time, and his aunt and uncle owned a cabin-like house where they had chickens and some other animals in London, Ohio, near a large man-made lake. I don't know if it's the same lake. I'm not familiar with the area, but the similarities in these 2 stories are striking to me. So Paul's aunt and uncle are taking this long-awaited vacation. Apparently they didn't have a ton of money, so they didn't travel much. And they asked Paul if he'll stay at their house and keep an eye on their chickens and their dogs. Paul was still living at home at the time with his parents, not too far from where his aunt and uncle lived, and he is excited to have a house to himself and to just feel like he's a bachelor. He also said that he had started seeing his girlfriend at the time, and he was excited to have some alone time with her. They're going on a cruise. The day they're leaving, Paul goes over there so they can give him instructions on how to take care of all the animals. This is my own little werewolf, Ozzy. I had to pick her up because she's bad and she was barking. His aunt gives him a rundown of how to properly take care of all of the animals, and before they leave, his uncle points to a drawer, opens it, and says, "There's a pew-pew in here. If you hear banging on the door, take it out and don't be afraid to use it." Paul's like, "What are you talking about? This is more than I signed up for." And his uncle says, "Yeah, there's an effing werewolf running around here." Paul's aunt rolls her eyes. She pulls him aside before they leave and she says, he had to pew-pew something that came to the door a few years ago and he hasn't been right since. Paul said his uncle was like a backwoods type of man. He was a veteran, he drank a lot, he had severe PTSD from being in a few wars. He rambled often about government conspiracies, so Paul knew that he wasn't exactly a trustworthy source, and he just didn't believe that there was a werewolf living on their property. The first night Paul was there alone, nothing happened. He went to work, came home, went to bed. He wakes up in the morning, he takes care of the animals, he's off that day, so he invites the girl he's seeing to come stay the night with him at his aunt and uncle's house. They're Netflix and chilling in the bedroom, whatever. I don't know what streaming service was available in 2007, but they're in the bedroom, they're awake. There was only one single window in the bedroom, so Paul looks at the window and he sees a pair of eyes peering in. It's too dark for him to make any features, but he said they were glowing, not in like a yellow or a red way, but the way that a pair of animal eyes glow if light catches them. I know exactly what he's talking about. I have a cat named Pete who looks at me in the dark, and it's the same thing. If you have a cat, you've seen this. So Paul's like, what the? And he jumps up to scare the animal away, but as soon as he gets up from the bed, the animal runs off into the woods. He gets back in bed, and a few minutes later, they hear a loud banging at the front door. Paul said it sounded like a SWAT team was trying to break down the door. It was like bang, 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 and the door was wood, but there was a set of metal bars that Paul's uncle had installed on the exterior of the front door. He also clocked it at this point that there were also bars on all of the inside windows. Paul said it was not the wind, it was something trying to break the door down. The door was wooden, it was like bang, 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 and the door was splintering around the edges. The plaster at the hinges started cracking. Paul's girlfriend is screaming, freaking out at this point. He says, you need to call 911. She calls 911 on her flip phone and she puts it on speakerphone. They're like, someone's trying to break into the house. And the 911 operator can hear the banging. She says, stay on the phone while we send dispatch. At this point, the door is visibly shaking. So Paul goes to the drawer where his uncle showed that object. And he takes it out because at this point, he fully believes that this door is about to come down. He braces himself against the wall, aims at the door, and prepares for the door to come down. And then it stops. The 911 dispatcher's on the line and she's like, are you still there? Are you okay? And they're like, it stopped. She said, you know, the police are on their way. Just stay safe. Is there a way that you can protect yourself? And they're just standing in the living room, breathing heavy, catching their breath in silence. When all of a sudden they see a dark, about 7-foot figure walk past the front window and look into the house. Paul said from the light of the living room, he could see the features, and it stood about 7 feet tall. It had dog-like ears, pointy ears, a long snout, and it turned and looked in the living room. He said it was covered head to toe in fur, and when he made eye contact with it, it seemed to raise its eyebrow, which he noticed there was a scar. The scar was ugly and jagged, and there was no fur growing where the scar was. It stood for a few seconds, glaring at him, and then it took off on 4 legs and ran into the woods. The police came later. They found large paw prints, which they attributed to a large dog, but did not find any trace of people. Paul said that his aunt and uncle did have neighbors, but they were a ways away, like nobody within earshot of the house. And the house had a long driveway that you had to drive down in order to make it to the house. Paul continued taking care of the animals and watching the house until his aunt and uncle returned. But he didn't sleep there. He stayed at his parents' house after taking care of the animals. He did have his ex-girlfriend, the girl he was dating at the time, reach out to me to verify his story and ask her any questions if needed. They're not together anymore, but they're still friends. And she doesn't live in the area anymore, but she says she fully believes after that night that there are werewolves living in those woods, or at least one werewolf. She also told me that there is a famous story about a werewolf in London, Ohio, but that most people in the area just think that it's just folklore. Paul also...
So chat, y'all know famous YouTuber Christmas List? So he might have seen a werewolf. So if you don't know who Christmas List is, he's a famous YouTuber. He travels around the world. Very, very nice guy. Right now he's in my country of Guyana. Big up to Guyana, big up to GT. So I've been catching up on his YouTube series. So Chris told a story of how he was at Algonquin Park and he might have seen a wolf, y'all. So if you know where this is, it's in Canada. It's one of those national parks. A lot of it hasn't been untouched. A lot of creatures, a lot of entities. Yeah, it's one of those places, y'all. Matter of fact, let Chris tell a story and we gonna watch it together.
My wife and I and my in-laws and kids were driving on a street like this in Algonquin Park, which is, you know, Canada's most famous national park. And it looked very similar, only light was being shined on by the headlights. I was driving the car. I don't even know how to put it. Something crossed the street that was not a human, that I had never seen before. Very slender, skinny, long limbs, looked like at least 12 feet tall. And I saw it run across the street so quick, and I'd say it was within 15 feet of me. And there are no other cars on the road, very, very similar to how it is right now. And there's no way in the world it could have been any kind of animal, and there's no way this was my imagination. And when this happened, instantly every hair on my body stood up. I looked to the right to my wife, and she looked at me, she's like, Chris, did you see that? And I don't know, man, I was like trembling inside because, you know, I've lived half a century, and I've been all over the world, and I've driven all over the world. Never in my life have I seen such a thing. The best way I could describe it is, the black was so black, there was no shine to it. It was like a matte black creature that just ran across the street. Now, if it looked like a moose or a bear, I would say it was probably a moose or a bear. But it was on 2 feet in Algonquin Park.
Dogman thing, it's multi-layered. It's not just one thing. It can look like, oh, that's a dogman, but where did it come from? because I think they come from different spots and places, and I think that how they become dogman. I do think that there are people that have these abilities through occultic rituals, but also very supernatural means. And I will just say this, and this is really crazy, it's never been on the show before, but I know of a guy who at one time in his life, I don't think he can anymore, at one time in his life, he could shapeshift into a dogman, what he called a werewolf. And he was very well known amongst these types of circles. And he's not the only one. There is a guy I talked to earlier this year in another state, face to face. And he talked about how he had a girlfriend that he dated, and she was one of these werewolves. And she wasn't the only one. There was a group of them, and there was warring factions. And there was a group of, we'll just call werewolves, that were from Tennessee and lower Kentucky that were coming to their state. And it was like underworld type-esque fighting amongst these werewolves, territorial type stuff.
I saw like a werewolf creature as a kid.
And you're fully confident in what you saw?
In my parents' house, there was like a screen door that went out from like a sunroom. I was probably like 7 years old. And I remember looking at it multiple times, and it was like in the window and it was kind of grinning at me. It had this like red eyes, and I was like, this is not going away. When I looked, I screamed and ran and told my parents. But you know, the reason I remember it though is because I would run from one room to the next for years after that. I wouldn't look out that window. I was listening to Sasquatch shows, and people were saying that they see the dogman, the dogman, the dogman. What the heck is the dogman? I know what the Sasquatch is. What is the dogman? And then I'm like, oh my gosh. I saw the same thing.
What is the dogman?
It's the werewolf.
Does it walk up on 2 legs?
Yeah, it does both.
Is it like the Harry Potter?
Kind of. It's just your classic werewolf. Most of them have the werewolf face. Upright, run on 2
pretty
legs.
terrifying. This footage changed it all for me, y'all. Everyone thinks werewolves transform underneath the moon. But what if I tell you that was just a limitation from the past? What if modern bloodlines evolved? Learned how to shift by choice? You have to understand, some are born with it and some are bitten. Okay? And now they all blend in. Quick tempers, night vision, and fast healing. You ever met someone with uncontrollable anger? Because I have. And then calms down and acts like nothing happened and everything is gravy? What if that wasn't trauma? What if that was the wolf breaking through? Y'all, they're not hiding in the forest no more. Are y'all cool? They in their motherfucking office. They in the bars. They go to the gym. They watching, waiting, and still hunting. Let's watch a little bit of footage I prepared for y'all, and y'all let me know what y'all think. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And also,
someone tagged me in a comment on TikTok and asked me to share the story about the time that I saw a werewolf. Now, I know a lot of you won't believe me, and to be quite honest with you, I don't blame you. If I wasn't as well versed and studied in this area, just like of the supernatural as I am, I probably wouldn't believe it myself. And it also helps that I had witnesses where I wouldn't believe myself. So one evening I was driving through a forested area. This was right by our house. We lived near a lake and there were a lot of trees and different things like that. So it was just really nature-y, you know. I'm driving through the dark, winding road in the forest, and all of a sudden I see a man standing on the side of the road. He looked like he wanted to cross the street, so I slowed down, you know, so I don't accidentally hit him. All of a sudden, a deer darts past him and runs across the street. But something about the deer wasn't quite right. So I looked closer and realized I can see through this deer. Like literally see through it. It's transparent, like it's not solid at all. So at this time, I'm like, okay, I really need to stop and let this man safely cross the street because I don't know what's going on. So the man begins to cross, and he gets halfway across the street, just walking like a normal man does. He gets halfway across the street, and suddenly he's not walking on two legs anymore. Right in front of us, he turns into a wolf and starts walking on all fours. So this wolf man and the spirit deer get to the other side of the road and just disappear. I'm sitting behind the steering wheel with my mouth just hanging open because I'm trying to process what just happened. Then suddenly my friend just kind of snaps me out of it by yelling, "Don't just sit there, drive." So I started driving and pulled into our parking lot. And at this point, I'm still wondering, am I the only one that saw this? Did it really happen? Next thing I know, everyone in the car just starts bursting out into conversation and comparing stories on what we just saw. Just to make sure we're consistent and all know that we saw the same thing. Turns out we all did see the same thing. This is a real thing, and people get involved in it in different ways, but it's all tied to the occult. Some people use things such as spirit guides or spirit animals. People think spirit animals are very innocent, but sometimes the person actually takes on the form of the animal that they've been channeling, and they develop abilities like this. This is also actually very popular, but not so spoken about when it comes to Native American culture. They even have something similar called skinwalkers. The skinwalkers have such a bad reputation, people are actually afraid to say the name of it because they don't want to get it, draw its attention, so it comes.
Alright, so I'm going to tell my werewolf story because I commented on someone else's werewolf story. I'll tag them, and a lot of people in the comments wanted to hear mine. So, without further ado. So I was in the Pasadena area of Maryland, which is on the east coast of the United States, for anyone who doesn't know. And I was driving my boyfriend home. He lived with his parents at the time. And I was coming around the turn, we were about to come into the neighborhood. And he wasn't paying attention, so I was like, oh, I'm going to brake check him. I'm going to pull a little prank on him. And be like, oh, something ran in the road. Sorry. And so we were coming around the turn, and I slammed on my brakes. And he flies forward. And in that exact moment, all I can describe it as is a werewolf ran in front of the car, lightning quick, pitch black, 10 feet long, 6 feet tall, on all fours, so fast in front of the car. He saw it. I saw it. I was in shock. I didn't, we were both did that just happen? And then I had to explain to him, I was only slamming on my brakes as a prank. I didn't even see that. If I hadn't, I would have hit into the werewolf. So me and him spent the rest of the night trying to rationalize it. We were what if it was a bear? Maybe it was a deer or a really big dog. But it was massive, and it was the fastest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And also, I just can't get over the fact that, I feel like I had an intuition to slam on my brakes. I know it was a joke, but if that hadn't happened, you know what I'm saying? So that, we kind of brushed it off maybe psychosis, group psychosis or something, because that was just that scary. But that's not even the crazy part. So the crazy part is, 2 weeks later, we're in Baltimore, which is where I lived, and we're hanging out with a friend, and she has a guy friend over that, I've never met before. And I'm telling both of them the werewolf story. We're like, oh yeah, we saw a werewolf, huh? And we're telling this guy, and he's like, oh, that's crazy. My brother had a werewolf experience. So let me tell you his brother's werewolf experience. So what happened to this guy's brother is he was out in the woods with some friends, and he heard rustling and growling in a bush, and he walked up to it like a dumbass, and a fucking werewolf popped out and scratched him on his chest like this, right? And he showed me a picture of his brother's chest. He has a scar, right? So I'm like, oh my god, werewolves are real. I'm not crazy. We're not crazy. We didn't both not make up this in our mind or whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but probably nothing to worry about, because that wasn't even in Baltimore. That was all the way out in Pasadena. So we were freaking out after that, and I was like, dude, you don't understand, we were in Pasadena when this happened. So the whole three of us are freaking out. Guy calls his brother and tells him. It's just insane to me, and that's not the last thing that happened with it, but it was the last time I saw anything. But I would be scared to get out of the car at night and stuff when I was visiting his parents and stuff.
Never thought werewolves existed. Now I'm not so sure. There have been tons of report of Dogman, which is almost a werewolf type creature. And everyone's heard of Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Lizard Man and all the common ones.
bones. People are saying this thing is not Dogman or Bigfoot or anything else but a werewolf. I can't verify 100% exactly where this picture was taken, but allegedly outside of a Texas zoo. I know your first thoughts are probably my thoughts, that someone in a costume or a mask. I debated on not even sharing this picture, but the more I look at it, I'm not so sure. This isn't the only alleged werewolf sighting here recently. I've been hearing tons, and I'm not 100% sure if it's Dogman. I don't think so. I think there's maybe some difference. If you need to zoom in, take screenshots, do something with the lighting, I want to know what you think. Examine this picture. It could be a hoax. I'm not sure. I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. If you have
those Youngstown, Ohio, you'll see the picture of exactly what I'm talking about. The railroad tracks right in front of the buildings. And then just beyond them, there would be giant piles of coke, which is basically an ingredient in the steel making process. It's just something that they utilize to make it. And they had huge piles of these things. I don't even know how high. I would say at least 15, 20 feet high, mile each way. So as far as the eye could see, it was just piles of this material. And these dogs ran right in front of our building and made a quick left. They ran across the railroad tracks. They went up the one side of the pile of coke and then down the other side. And immediately we started hearing fighting. We assumed that the dogs were fighting with each other. We had no idea what was going on because they were on the other side. It was dark. We couldn't see. All we could hear is dogs attacking. After maybe 2 or 3 seconds, we started to realize, no, they're not fighting with each other. They're fighting with something else, because what came over the top of these dogs biting and barking was a very loud and deep growl, roar that basically let out, which every one of us, our eyes open, we're like, oh my God, there's something over there. They're attacking something else. And within a few seconds, we start hearing yelping. These dogs are yelping in pain. And then what happened next was when all of the craziness started. And what happened was 2 dogs, one after another, come literally flying over the top of this pile of material. They were thrown, like somebody had grabbed them and thrown them with great force. The first one, I'll always remember, it was upside down and its butt and tail were facing us. So it definitely didn't jump. It was thrown. And it hit the ground and rolled, and it got up and limped away. Another one came, and it hit the top of this, and material went everywhere, and it hit the ground. And I'll always remember this because, I'm a dog lover, I'm an animal lover. It had a huge gash from its shoulder all the way to its midsection. It looked like something had flayed open the dog. And it was still alive. It was bleeding all over. It got up and it ran away. And, I always remember, I was like, oh my God, I hope that dog lives. I don't think it did. It was very, very brutal the way that it looked. And then a couple more come thrown over it, and then the rest of the pack came running. And they all went back the way they came, which was to our left, in the way that we would come into this area. And we're watching them run away. There's blood on the ground. We're hearing them yelp as they run away. And as we're watching in just complete disbelief, one of my friends, I remember him like touching me on my back. He was to my left and behind me. And he goes, guys, what is that? What is that over there? And we all simultaneously look to our right. And what ended up crawling up to the top of the pile of this material was, quite honestly, something that and I say this all the time, and I'll always say it, it was so big that it looked fake. It was the biggest animal I have ever seen to date. My friends agreed. There were 4 of us again. So we were all able to talk about this for years after this experience. 2 of them are gone, unfortunately. They passed away. 1 is left. And, we always talk about this with each other, or we did. And my buddy that's still here, we still to this day talk about it. And it was basically just a gigantic wolf-looking creature that was on all 4s. We started comparing over time what we could say the size of this thing looked like. And the easiest thing that we found once we started looking at pictures of things, and because, this was in the late 80s, we didn't have the internet and all that. So we're looking at magazines and books, and the shape and the size of this thing was the closest to a polar bear. But it was as big as any polar bear or bigger. And it had the telltale shape of a polar bear, where if you have say like a Kodiak grizzly bear, it's like a walking boulder. just giant and massive and just boom, boom. This was very sleek, long-limbed, very lengthy, more muscular instead of just big and bulky and long. And it crawled to the top of this pile, and it was watching where the dogs had gone, and it hadn't paid any attention to us. It hadn't noticed us at that point. And what it did next, I've always said this, some people might find this amusing. It was not amusing at all, because of what happened. So this dog was watching them. It was looking in the direction they left, and it lifted its leg, and it did its business. And immediately we knew it was a male because of what it did. And what was scary about it was the force at which, when it started urinating, at which it hit this pile of this material it was standing on, pieces just started going up in the air. You could hear the stream. It was like a hose had just been turned on. And I stepped back. I was like, whoa, that's not normal. It's just so massive, and it was so strong of the stream that this thing let go. I started feeling real fear, because, any second it's going to notice us. And just as I'm thinking about that, my buddy who had been to the back and noticed it first started to stumble backwards and fell into that metal makeshift wall that I had been describing to you. And, what happened. It made that telltale sign of metal on concrete, and immediately this thing snaps its head and it looks at us, and we all froze.